that was, and again, you're not an expert, and that's fine. But do you know? I mean, do you think that he was in his right mind, or he was just a nut that was doing these things because his mom had pushed him so far out there?
I think it's his upbringing with his mother, that made him that way. His mother told him and his brother that girls were bad, and it's just like what's going on in the Bates TV show, where she don't want Norman around kids and stuff. And again, that character is based off Ed Gein, and I believe it's his upbringing that definitely warped his mind. I'm not a psychiatrist, that's for sure, but I could see that once you start killing. And you cross that line, it's just very hard to stop, and that's why there's so many, such a long list of serial killers.
Yeah.
And let me touch upon something else too, because I know that y'all talking about serial killers, but a lot of people don't realize. I mean, if you look at some of the mafia guys like Sammy the Bull, I'm getting ready to write a book on Sammy the Bull. I mean, he killed over 16 confirmed. And would you consider him a serial killer?
I mean,
most definitely.
It's funny when they look at the criteria of what a serial killer is and their definitions and things like that. I'm like, they're all kind of in the same ballpark to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. But they'll cut a deal with somebody like Sammy the Bull, but then they'll lock all these other guys up, And so I think in some form or another, there's a need for these people in our world, in our society, and that's why I'm in horror. I like horror. I like I love this type of stuff, and I like the real stories, the true stories, And Ed Gein was definitely somebody. I mean, can you name everybody that he's inspired in horror films? I mean, just alone, Norman Bates, Leatherface, and Hannibal. I was told there were some other ones. Yeah, Buffalo Bill. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
there's a ton.
Yeah, there is, and the guys. I think look at the skull. On my book cover that you have, there's a picture of a skull on there, and they say that he ate food out of a skull, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they also say that he made chairs and lamps and stuff like that. Although I really researched that stuff, and I couldn't find out if it was how true that was, but I believe it to be true. I've seen some pictures of some of the things they took from the house, and I think the man was a true artist.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's funny, kind of like, I mean, when you think about it, like Gacy was a great artist, but it was obviously, sometimes those creative minds go awry, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at and again, people out there that's listening, they might say, oh, well, that guy's crazy or whatever. But if you really, like, for people like us that are in the horror, and you really look at the crime scene photos, I mean, Paul Castellano when he was shot, and I mean, it's some beautiful art, to me. Bugsy Siegel when he's laying there on the couch, Lizzie Borden when she hacked her family up, Those things, to me, those crime scene photos are beautiful.
We like a page on Facebook, Death Row Art Show, and it's pretty much serial killer memorabilia and artwork from serial killers, and I think a lot of the people that listen to the show would agree with what you're saying right now. And it's one of those things where it's kind of like, to me, it's kind of like a car wreck where you don't want to look, but you kind of have to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're gonna look and you're gonna stare.
Yeah, it's in your nature to stare and look. And some people might be disgusted by it, where other people say, "Hey, you know, this is actually beautiful," you know. And I'm definitely a fan of that kind of stuff. But you know, and there's a lot of people out there that fear me, and they think that I worship the devil, and I don't worship the devil. You know, I like to put out there that right now, just because I like horror and I like those kind of pictures, you know, I don't worship the devil. You know, so.
It's kind of sad that in 2015 you still have to answer, you know, and say that, because I mean, like, people don't realize that at this point, like, that people just are intrigued by things like that. But it is true. It's almost like we have to apologize for the things we like, which I'm not gonna, but it is how it is, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's really sad how many people are actually, they fear me. They don't want to be around me because they think I'm going to kill them, you know. And I guess it's, you know, some of the things I say, some of the things I like, my taste in things, they just have this fear because they've been sheltered, you know. And I think you shouldn't fear death. I mean, if death comes from me like in 10 minutes from now, you know, I'm going to embrace it. Let's do it, you know. So my whole thing is, I don't fear no man on this planet or no woman on this planet, and so it's like, why does people fear me? I don't know.
So another thing I wanted to kind of get into with you was how long did it actually take you to put together this book? Because, you know, despite the fact that a lot of his known crimes are pretty cut and dry, there's still a lot of mystery to him to this day.
Yeah, and that's why I was compiling a larger book, because the book that I did, it took me about a month to research this stuff, because you can find a lot of this information online, and the reason why you can find it on various websites is because it's true, it's factual. You're going to find facts from the same facts on various websites. But I've compiled so much data, and I didn't want to include the tourists that are missing in the neighboring towns. I didn't want to include all that until I was able to actually interview the people in the towns, and you know, and that takes longer. This next book's probably going to take another year before I can release it. You know? But I'm a fan of Ed Gein's, and I definitely wanted to go ahead and release a short story on him. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Question for you here: if you could sit down in a room with Ed Gein, and he could be in his 50s and his early 60s, before he was senile, obviously, although I think he'd be pretty freaking entertaining as a senile person. What would you ask him? What were the things that you would say to him just to kind of pick his brain or whatever was left of it at that point?
Oh, man, it's kind of like, I would probably, if I could sit down with Ed Gein, am I allowed to cuss on here?
Absolutely.
Okay, so if I could sit down with Ed Gein today, I would probably take him to find him a piece of pussy that would actually probably get him out of killing females and wanting to become a woman. I think if you're going to kill somebody, why go after somebody who's weaker than you? You know what I mean? Why not go after somebody who's actually doing wrong in the world and go after them and just leave their bodies laying around, you know? And, you know,
right.
If you got a nice piece of ass waiting on you, it's going to be this thing. Maybe he'll be a lot happier, you know? A bottle of Crown Royal, nice piece of ass, you know?
Yep. You know, you know, one of the things that I always wondered about him, and maybe you can shed a little light on this, because it's one of those things where I don't think people fully understand, like, transsexuals or people that are, you know, like, gender confused. And of course, you know, Bruce Jenner was or Caitlyn Jenner was a popular topic over the last few weeks. So it makes me wonder, do you think Ed Gein was gay? Was he bisexual? Did he like women, but he was just gender confused? What was the deal with him, do you think?
I think he had turned actually gay because of his mother and the relationship that they had, and I think that, you know, it was definitely his upbringing as a kid. I mean, look at the arguments that his dad and his mom used to have, you know, and she was supposed to be a Christian woman, and that's the thing about these supposedly Christians out there who really don't read the Bible. I mean, read the Bible, you know, and don't just think about what your mom taught you. Read the actual Bible and don't force stuff on your family. That woman was, if you're going to look at who was crazy in the Gein family, I would say his mom. That was the nut.
Makes me think of Psycho 4 whenever I watch, you know, Psycho 4, because I think that's an underappreciated movie, and his mom was loony as shit. It was her that was the nut, and of course he ended up being crazy, but that was all a product of her.
Yeah, and but to answer your question there, I believe that he wanted to become a woman to rebel against his mother, because his mama kept saying how nasty women were and girls, and to stay away from them and stuff. This is his upbringing, right? And I don't know, man. When you're in high school, you got to salvage as many as you can when they're clean, you know, when them girls are clean. Because when you get older, you don't know what you're sleeping with. But you know, and so for him to be restricted from doing that, I think that added to him being a little homosexual, and definitely he would have been a Jenner type dude today, I believe. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a kind of a product, number one, of his upbringing, but also a product of location and time period, too. People didn't know how to deal with a person like that. And, of course, he was secluded, but let's say he wasn't, then maybe things would have turned out differently, if he had a different type of society that he lived in.
Yeah. If he would have just been removed from that home and raised in a foster home. But then again, I mean, then we wouldn't have had Leatherface and we wouldn't have had Norman Bates. So I'm glad he killed those people, man, because I mean, look at the movies that come out of that. I mean, Psycho and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, those are great films. People had to die for those films to be made, but good, I mean, I don't really have much sympathy for the people who are being murdered, so,
So it's code number 2 time for anybody listening. Now's your chance to win a free book. Tweet us or email us. That it's all on the page. Number 2 code, Leatherface. So since he threw out Leatherface, we'll go ahead and throw out Leatherface. That's our second code. Tweet us, email us. We'll get with Timothy with the winners. Anyway, in the meantime, do you consider Ed Gein more like Leatherface, more like Buffalo Bill, or more like Norman Bates out of the 3?
I would think if you could take Norman Bates and Leatherface and put them together, that's definitely Ed Gein right there. That would be my. So I know you got a psychiatrist that's coming on, a professor after this, and maybe he can shine better light on that. But for me, Norman Bates and Leatherface, definitely Ed Gein. And a lot of people thought, Leatherface is made up, there's not really a guy. But yeah, I mean, he was making faces and he was wearing them. Not only that, but just like Buffalo Bill and stuff, where he wanted to wear the whole skin, So it's, that was definitely a different kind of way back in Ed's time to become a woman without, chopping your thing off and, doing it the way that I'm sure I don't know if they had breast implants back in those days, but Ed Gein definitely wanted breasts,
Yes, he did, and he found a way to get them, along with necklaces with or belts with nipples on them. So here's another thing for you. Since you're a horror guy like we are, who's your favorite horror character? And I'm talking about like slashers, things like that. So like not real life horror, but the movies.
And I'm going to say this, and I know if he's listening or if he's not listening, I know me and him had some beef back in 2008. But, my favorite horror character is Jason Voorhees. And I like the Jason that was played by Kane Hodder. And I would like to tell Kane that whatever happened with us back in the day, man, it's been long enough, and it's kind of stupid at this point. And I'm still a fan of his, And just like I told him in 2008, if you want to put the hockey mask on and whip my ass, you can. But if you're not going to wear the hockey mask, I'm going to beat your ass. But as a fan of his, I can appreciate what Kane did for the character of Jason Voorhees, And that was my favorite Jason.
Agreed, by the way. I agree with you. Vic is a Leatherface guy. I'm a Jason guy. Always will be. But that being said, I do have a soft spot in my heart for Leatherface. So, since we are talking about Ed Gein, and of course Texas Chainsaw Massacre goes right along with that, most people would say that the first Texas Chainsaw is their favorite movie of the series. Is that your favorite of the series?
You know what, though? And here's the thing. It's my favorite of the series, yeah, but I don't like Gunner, man. Have you ever met Gunner?
Yeah, and it's funny because the first time I met him, he was really humble. The second time, you could tell he just didn't give a shit about meeting anybody anymore. The third time, it was even worse. So, I think I know where you're going, but go ahead. I'll let you talk.
Yeah, I met him at a horror convention. I was doing horror convention tours and stuff a few years back, and I met him at a horror convention, and the way that he was, disassociating himself with the fans, and, I didn't really appreciate that. I didn't like his attitude towards the people who made him who he is, and there's a lot of people that don't realize that Gunner was actually fired from that film towards the end of it. And there's a few minutes in there where the guy who played Leatherface in Part 2 actually stepped in to take over for Gunner. Yeah, I don't know if you said I don't know, man. That was my first experience with guns.